So this is the Nintendo Switch 2, and I didn't want to review it right away because I thought that a review after just a day or two or even a week would be much more of a first impression than a real review. I wanted to have a little bit more time with my thoughts and really see if things are just a hype in the moment or are just real thoughts and real user experience. And after a little bit more usage, how good is the Nintendo Switch 2? When the Nintendo Switch 1 came out, it was a much different situation in the world. A handheld hybrid, a handheld gaming console of this strength was just something you would never expect. But now we're living in a world where we have Windows-based PCs that look like a console. We have the Steam Deck and the Steam Deck OLED, which are incredible handheld PC gaming consoles. And then we have the second iteration of the Nintendo Switch. It isn't here to be better in terms of just sheer power than the other two. I feel like it's made for a specific kind of a user that if you are that kind of a user, you're gonna love this device. But it really depends on the use case scenario you have for it. One, the handheld, and the second, the docked experience. I feel like those two things really make this a kind of a hard device to really review because it is gonna be dependent on how you're gonna use it. In my opinion, it is gonna be a different experience, different kind of a rating if you're gonna use it just docked or a handheld. Or if you're gonna use it as a hybrid console, which in my opinion is the best use case for this. And one more thing that is really important for this review is acknowledging the fact of the hardware upgrades versus the software and the software upgrades. So games and optimization. Right off the bat, I have to say that this is definitely the best hybrid console on the market. Hands down, nothing comes close to this as a hybrid console. You have the stationary console like PS5 or Xbox Series X, which are incredible, but those are stationary. And then we have the handheld PCs and the Steam Deck. Those are really good handhelds and really powerful, but those are not great as a hybrid or a stationary console. They can do it, but they're just not as good as the Nintendo Switch 2. This is just so seamless. You just put it into the dock and you can play on the big screen. Everything is automatically set for you. You don't have to play with resolution, with frame rates. Take the controllers out and you can play. That is how good this works. It's really seamless. It is just not going to be as strong as a home console. And I feel like the whole video is going to be that it is not as good as a strictly home console when playing it docked on a big screen TV. It just isn't as powerful, and you're better off playing the AAA games on a home console. Where you're playing it on handheld, it's a whole different situation where it really is a great handheld console. Both in handheld and docked mode, the upgrades are visible. The upgrades are felt from the first moment you put it up. It just feels like in every single aspect, it is a nice evolution of what we had with the Nintendo Switch. Also on the Nintendo Switch 2, if you want to play online, you have to get the Nintendo Switch Online membership. If you're interested in saving a little bit of money on that, or if you're looking for upgrade packs for Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, or other gift cards for Nintendo Switch 2, check out the link down below for instant gaming. This is where I got my Nintendo Switch 2 online subscription, where you can save a little bit of money on it. And also, together with instant gaming, we're doing a giveaway where one of you can win a game of your choice. If you're interested in this month's giveaway, check out the link down below. Everything is impressive in terms of build quality. It is definitely feeling much more, I would say, like a premium device rather than a toy like the Nintendo Switch 1. The OLED was a little bit better, but this definitely feels even more premium. Just the build quality, the materials definitely feels more premium. Even the Joy-Cons not moving as much as the Switch 1 Joy-Cons definitely makes it more, better feeling in hand. But there's still a little bit of wobble, but it's still nicer than the one that we had on the Nintendo Switch with the sliding Joy-Cons. And from the moment you boot it up, in terms of the software, it runs really smoothly. Everything is just instant. You can really quickly go into the store and not have to wait 10 minutes for it to load up. It really works as a 2025 device should work. Everything is run fast, everything loads fast. Just in terms of software, how it's performing, and how it looks on a big screen, on the small screen, everything is incredibly well made. Everything just works great. And that was my first impression. When I first turned it on and then put it on the big screen when I was setting it up, it really felt like it was really impressive. And seeing the screen at full HD on here in 4K 60 frames per second on a 50-inch OLED display really made me appreciate how next gen it felt. Like it really feels like a nice step up from what we had on the Nintendo Switch and the Nintendo Switch OLED. Whenever I put it on big screen, I would just be like, no, this is not for me. I cannot play like this. I know there are people that are gonna say it's fine. For me personally, after having used the PS5, Xbox Series X, and then seeing something like this on a 50-inch 4K 120Hz display, it just didn't feel too good. It really felt like it was really lacking. But now it felt incredible. To put it on the big screen, so smooth, everything working so nice, that was an incredible feeling. And the same thing can be said about the hardware in terms of the screen. For example, the screen on here being a full HD instead of the 720p that we had, being a 120Hz display, it just makes it that you can play games at a higher frame rate. This screen is much bigger, and well, a lot of people are gonna say I would prefer it to be OLED. I have to say this is a pretty good LCD. I think it's the case that I had with the Asus ROG Ally, where it was an LCD panel, but it was a good LCD panel, and I never thought about it that is, oh, I wish it was an OLED. And the same thing, at least for my usage, which is at home, to my surprise, this really is a good LCD panel, and I don't really see that I need it to be an OLED. I feel like the response time, how fast it reacts, how good it is, the color rendition, everything just makes it a really good panel, and I feel like there's a little bit too much of, oh, it's not an OLED. I get it, but in my opinion, this is a great screen, and those that have it, I'm sure they're gonna really appreciate how good it is. And yes, the blacks are not gonna be as good as on the OLED, it's not gonna be as dark, but the blacks are gonna be pretty good anyway. But side by side, you're gonna see that the blacks are real blacks, and here, like, the lights are bleeding into it, so you see a little bit more of a grayish, like a lightened black color. But other than that, I still feel like it's really good. The colors, the sharpness especially, is incredible on the Nintendo Switch 2. Really makes it a step above the Nintendo Switch 1. Then we have the upgrades in terms of the Joy-Cons. They're bigger, much more comfortable in hand because of their size and their, the way they're made. They're a little bit more rounded off. And another thing is they don't feel as flimsy on the unit as the Nintendo Switch 1 because they're now magnetic. And I have to say that this is much more satisfying than the Nintendo Switch 1. I love the clicking of the Nintendo Switch 1, but in my opinion, this is just a much better way to do this. Not only is it just more convenient to really take it off, it's just more convenient to put it on, feels more secure, and to be honest, there is this kind of like a fidget spinner feel of it that I could just sit here and do this for the whole day and for the whole video. Just feels really nice, like it feels really good, if you know what I mean. The whole upgrade in terms of hardware, strictly talking about hardware, the Joy-Cons, the screen, even the stereo speakers, even the kickstand on the back, everything here just feels so nice. Even the little details like the vents on the top now being a little bit bigger, making it a little bit better in terms of the heat dissipation. And by the way, they're super silent. Also, even the game cartridge slot is opened up a little bit differently. It's a much more sturdy design and much better design in my opinion. It's easier to open up, it's sturdier, it's bigger. It just feels like another upgrade. Like they did take all of the things that we had on the Nintendo Switch 1 and upgraded them. Same thing with the Joy-Cons. The analog sticks on the first ones were really short, so if you were playing something like Fortnite, it would be really hard to aim. This is maybe not as long as I wish. I would love it to be even longer. It's still a much more movable and more range in the movement in the analog stick, which is another benefit of it. How they're gonna last in the long run, I guess we have to see, but so far everything seems to be good. Also, another thing is we have the USB-C on the top, which is another hardware upgrade. Now you can have one on the bottom, one on the top. You can, for example, if you were to use it as a desktop mode, you can put it on here and have the USB charging on the top. This makes it really nice. I just feel like they really made it not a revolution, but an evolution, made it really good hardware. And I cannot wait to see how this works in the future, because the software, and I'm talking about especially the games, not even the software that it has, because the software that is on this device is really good. It is smooth, it works fine, 4K 60 frames per second thanks to the hardware, but I have to say that the software in terms of games, I don't think so. It's here. Mario Kart World, while being a great game, there are things that I just don't like about it. There are things that I just feel like are a step backwards compared to the last one. Especially for this two-player split screen online, you cannot play with two different accounts like we used to be able to. Just, there's not as much customization in terms of carts. just feels a little bit lackluster. But that is just my gripe with the game itself. But other than Mario Kart World, there is really no console seller like we had with Nintendo Switch 1 and Zelda Breath of the Wild. And you can actually get the upgraded Zelda Breath of the Wild and Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, which run amazingly good, even on a big screen, which was just perfect, because now you have a reason to play them, not only handheld, but even on a big screen, they're perfectly fine. Like, Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is perfectly, amazingly good now to be played on a big screen TV, which just, I was playing it yesterday and I was really pleasantly surprised how good it actually can be compared to how it was on the Nintendo Switch 1. But I have to say that it is playing something that you already played. For many, it's gonna be something that they already played, and there's nothing new to play. So it feels like it's a great hardware, but it's the best for those that either didn't have the Nintendo Switch 1 or didn't play the games that they wanted to on Nintendo Switch 1. For example, the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, and other games like Cyberpunk 2077. All of these games are amazing, especially on the Nintendo Switch 2, but they're amazing if you haven't played them. If you already played them, you'd feel like there's nothing new. So this is like a great hardware, but the software is just not there. But in my opinion, that is actually a good thing. Now that we have great hardware, I cannot wait to see how newer games, better games run on this, and seeing how good games look on it, both on handheld and docked, and even games like Cyberpunk 2077, they can run on this. It just makes me curious how good this can actually be in the long run, because we finally have better hardware at the start, so now we can see how the software can catch up to it. Rather than having great software and games, but just not having the hardware to really just have the quality that we could have from those games. I just feel like Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is finally played the way the devs actually wanted us to play. The quality, especially on the big screen, I can feel like the whole world, it is super nice. And the same thing can be said about the Joy-Cons and the controller grip to make it a controller. In my opinion, it's just much better than the first iteration. While I wish the grip was a little bit bigger to make it a little bit bigger and a little bit wider, I feel like it's better just because the Joy-Cons are bigger and it just feels better in hand. Same thing can be said about the Pro controller. This is a pretty nice Pro controller. If you want to see a more in-depth video about this, I made a whole video just about this controller in the top right corner of the screen right now. But just in short, this is the second iteration of the Nintendo Switch Pro controller for Nintendo Switch 2. It feels mostly similar, but it is a evolution once again, with the two back buttons, slightly smaller controller overall, and other than that, just feels really good in hand. And one more thing, the amazingly smooth sticks, just incredibly good. So this is a great controller, and now I feel like it's even more worth it than it was on Nintendo Switch 1, because the games look so good on big screen that it's worth to have a proper controller. When I was playing Zelda Tears of the Kingdom on the big screen, 50-inch TV, 4K, 60 frames per second, I know it's an upscaled 4K, but it's 4K nonetheless, with a Pro controller, it just felt so nice. It was a proper docked mode. And like I said, the screen at Full HD 120 frames per second just looks incredible. And it's a really nice LCD display. And playing on the big screen, it just means that you can really take advantage of the next iteration of the Nintendo Switch and play the games that you might be missed out on or just didn't feel like playing, like me, that I just quit because the quality wasn't there, like Zelda Tears of the Kingdom or Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. There you have a nice reason to play them, and even more so because you can play it on big screen. But if we're talking strictly about the docked experience and just playing as a home console, if you're not a real big fan of the just Mario's, Zelda's, the Nintendo IPs, I would rather get a different console that is just much more powerful and better for home gameplay. But if you're looking for a hybrid, this is definitely the best one. And if you're looking for a handheld, it's gonna depend on what you play. It's a great handheld. It's really easy to use. I feel like it's the most intuitive, it's the most console-like experience because it's a console at the end of the day. And overall, I feel like this is the definitive edition of Nintendo Switch. Meaning that if you don't have the Nintendo Switch 1 or the Nintendo Switch OLED, I would definitely say this is the best iteration to get and get you started with the best quality of games and overall performance. If you already have the Nintendo Switch OLED or Nintendo Switch 1 and you have played all the main games that you wanted to play, I feel like you could wait for a little bit until there's games that are actually games that you want to play, that you want to experience on a better quality, meaning that I would just hold out until there's something that you truly want to play on the next generation experience. Unless it's a situation like me, where I missed out on Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, I did only get through Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, and I have 2 games right away that are much better on the Nintendo Switch 2. I feel like I said, this is the definitive Nintendo Switch experience. If you have any more questions about the Nintendo Switch 2, or I missed something that you were interested in, let me know in the comment section down below. I'm gonna try to answer all of your questions regarding this console. With that being said, what are your thoughts about the Nintendo Switch 2? Let me know in the comment section too, because I'm really curious how you guys see it in 2025, where there is just much more competition. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I hope you guys enjoyed this video once again, and I'll see you next time.